This is Concept E classes, and today we'll see part 2 of chapter 6, tissues. So in part 1 we discussed about tissues, are plant and animal made up of same type of tissues, the differences between them, and we saw various types of plant tissues. In this video we'll see about animal tissues. Animal tissues. When we breathe, we can actually feel the movement in our chest, right? It goes like this, up and down. This is mainly due to the specialized cells called as muscle cells. The contraction and relaxation of these muscle cells result in this movement. Similarly, during breathing, we inhale oxygen, right? The oxygen is absorbed in the lungs and then it is transported to all parts of our body through blood. Now, blood flows and carries not only oxygen but various substances as well. For example, it carries oxygen and food to all cells. It also collects the waste from all parts of the body and carries them to the liver and kidney for disposal. So here, both this blood and muscle cells are examples of the tissues found inside our body. So on the basis of the functions they perform, we can think of different types of animal tissue such as epithelial tissues, connective tissue, muscular tissue and nervous tissue. So let's discuss each of these tissues briefly. So the first tissue that we are going to study is epithelial tissue. Now the covering in an animal body or the protective tissues are epithelial tissues. Most of the covering in our body are made up of epithelial tissue. Now the epithelium covers most organs and cavities within the body. So this epithelial tissue is present inside our body as well as outside the body. It also forms a barrier to keep different body systems separate. See, here we can see different types of epithelial tissue. So these epithelial tissues, they are like a protection to the cells of our body and they form a barrier to keep different body systems separate, and they cover most of the organs in our body. For example, our skin, the lining of our mouth, the lining of blood vessels, lung alveoli inside the lungs, kidney tubules, they are all made up of epithelial tissue. So let's see how the epithelial tissue looks like. Now the epithelial tissues are tightly packed and they form a continuous sheet. They have only a small amount of cementing material between them. That is, there is almost no intercellular spaces. If you observe epithelial tissue cells under a microscope, you can see the structure like this. See, it is tightly packed along a continuous sheet and there are no intercellular spaces between them. As a result, the permeability of the epithelial cells plays a very important role in regulating the exchange of materials between the body. That is, anything entering or leaving the body must cross at least one layer of this epithelial tissues. Okay. Now, regardless of the type, all epithelium is usually separated from the underlying tissue by an extracellular fibrous basement membrane. That is, all these tissues have a basal surface. That is, they have a basement membrane, and that basement membrane separates this epithelial tissue from the underlying tissue. Now let's understand about the different types of epithelium. Okay, now these different epithelia show different structures based on the functions they perform. So first we have squamous epithelium. There is simple squamous epithelium and stratified squamous epithelium. Then we have columnar epithelium. We also have ciliated columnar epithelium. Then cuboidal epithelium, and finally glandular epithelium. So let's study about each of this epithelia briefly. So the first epithelium that we are going to study is a simple squamous epithelium. See, if you observe this image, we can see that it is a single flat layer of cells, like a pavement, right? See, the cells are arranged from one end to another, like how tiles are laid down on the floor. So this is also called as pavement epithelium. Now if you observe this simple squamous epithelium under a microscope, we can say that it's like a polygonal in shape on the surface, right? So it is a single layer of cells. Now in cells lining the blood vessels or lung alveoli, where transportation of substances occur through a selectively permeable surface, there is a simple flat kind of epithelium. That epithelium is the simple squamous epithelium. Squama meaning scale of the cell. Now the simple squamous epithelium cells are very thin, flat, and they form a delicate lining, and they can be found, as we said, in the cells lining the blood vessels, in the air sacs of the lung alveoli, in the lining of the heart or lymph vessels as well. Next we have another type of squamous epithelium, which is stratified squamous epithelium. So this is how a stratified squamous epithelium look like, and this is how it is originally under a microscope. The skin, esophagus, the lining of the mouth, they are all covered with this squamous epithelium. So where all can we find this squamous epithelium? The skin, esophagus, the lining of the mouth. Now if you observe the skin epithelial cells, they are arranged in many layers to prevent wear and tear. That is, the epithelial cells are arranged in many layers called a stratum to prevent wear and tear. So since they are arranged in patterns of layer, this epithelium is called as stratified squamous epithelium. The next epithelium that we are going to study is columnar epithelium. So this is how a columnar epithelium looks like, and this is how we can see the columnar epithelium under a microscope. So if you observe this, we can see that there are pillar-like epithelium, right? It consists of elongated or column-like cells. In intestines, where absorption and excretion occur, tall epithelial cells are present in the inner lining of the intestine. So this epithelium is called as columnar epithelium, and it helps in the movement across the epithelial barrier. So mainly the function of this columnar epithelium is to absorb. It also secretes mucus and enzymes, and the structure is that it is pillar-like structures, and they are mainly found in intestines or colon, etc. Next we have ciliated columnar epithelium. So this is how ciliated columnar epithelium looks like. In respiratory tract, the columnar epithelium also have cilia, that is, it has a hair-like projections on the outer surface. See, these cilia, they can move, and the movement pushes the mucus forward to clear it. So this type of epithelium is called as ciliated columnar epithelium. Next epithelium that we are going to study is cuboidal epithelium. So this is a simple cuboidal epithelium. It's like cube-like structures. This is how we can see it under a microscope. So the cells may be cube-like cells, and they fit very closely. Okay, so this cuboidal epithelium with cube-shaped cells forms the lining of kidney tubules, the ducts of salivary glands, where it provides mechanical support. So this epithelium provides mechanical support to our body. Next we have glandular epithelium. See, this is the image of a glandular epithelium. Under a microscope, it is seen like this. So the epithelial cells often acquire additional specialization as gland cells, which can secrete substances at epithelial surface. Sometimes a portion of this epithelial tissue folds inward and a multicellular gland is formed. So this is called as a glandular epithelium. Okay, so it involves in the absorption and excretion or secretion. So that is the main function of this glandular epithelium. So till now we were studying about epithelial tissues, the different types of epithelial tissue. Next we are going to study about the connective tissues. So the first connective tissue that we are going to study is blood. Now why do we call blood as a type of connective tissue? Let's see. Now the connective tissue contains cells which are loosely spaced and embedded in an intercellular matrix. So the matrix may be jelly-like, fluid-like, or dense or rigid. Okay, so every cells of connective tissues are loosely spaced inside an intercellular matrix, and the matrix can be either jelly-like, sometimes dense or fluid, and the nature of the matrix actually decides the function of the connective tissue. So we call blood as a connective tissue because it has a fluid matrix, fluid-like matrix called as plasma, in which there are red blood corpuscles, white blood corpuscles and platelets. Now the plasma, it constitutes 55% of the blood, and the rest of the 45% is the corpuscles. Okay, so this RBCs, they are also called as erythrocytes, which contain hemoglobin, which helps in the transportation of oxygen. We have WBC, white blood corpuscles, which are also called as leukocytes. They help in the clotting of blood. Then we also have platelets. We'll study more about this in higher classes. Okay, so this fluid-like matrix called as plasma, it consists of corpuscles. It also contains proteins, salts and hormone. Now what is the function of this blood? The blood, it flows and transport gases, digested food, hormones and waste materials to different parts of the body. Now the next connective tissue that we're going to study is a bone. Okay, so bone is actually a skeletal tissue. That is, it forms the framework that supports the body. See, because the whole body is made up of skeleton, right? It also anchors the muscles and supports the main organs of the body. It is a strong and non-flexible tissue. Now the bone cells are also embedded in a very hard matrix. So here the matrix is very dense or rigid, that is made up of calcium and phosphorus compounds. Now let's see two another types of connective tissues which are related to bone. One is ligament and another is tendons. Now two bones can be connected to each other by another type of connective tissue called as ligament. That is, two bones are connected together by a connective tissue called as ligament. Now this ligament is a tissue which is very elastic and it has considerable strength. Now ligaments contain a very little matrix and connect bones with bones. Now in the case of tendons, the tendons connect muscles to the bones, and it's another type of connective tissue. So a tendon is a connective tissue that connects the muscles to the bones. If ligaments connects bone to bone, tendons connect muscles to bone. The tendons are fibrous tissue with great strength, but they are not very flexible. They only have a limited flexibility. Okay, now this is an image under a microscope of a tendon and a ligament. Now if you observe the fibers inside the matrix of a tendon, it's parallel, whereas in the case of ligament, it is nearly parallel. So the next connective tissue is cartilage. So cartilage is another connective tissue that has widely spaced cells. See, here we can see that this solid matrix of a cartilage is composed of proteins and sugars. And what is the main function of cartilage? It smoothens the bone surface at joints. And where can we see this cartilage? It is present in nose, ear, trachea and larynx. Now if you take the case of both a bone and a cartilage, we can fold the cartilage of our ears, whereas we cannot bend the bones of our arms. So that is a difference between a cartilage and a bone. Now let's see about two more connective tissues, which is areolar connective tissue and adipose connective tissue. So first let's see about areolar connective tissue. Now where can we find this areolar connective tissue? It is found between the skin and the muscles, around the blood vessels and nerves, and inside the bone marrow. Now this areolar connective tissue is a loose connective tissue. That is, if you observe the matrix of an areolar connective tissue, it consists of yellow and white fibers, and all these fibers are loosely arranged, and there is space between these fibers. That is why it is called as areolar connective tissue. And this areolar connective tissue is found in continuous layers beneath the skin and between many organs and between many muscles as well. So the main function of this areolar connective tissue is that it fills the space inside the organs, it supports the internal organs and helps in the repair of tissues. Now let's see about adipose tissue. Now this adipose tissue is like a modified form of areolar tissue that contains a large number of fat cells. Fat storing adipose tissue is found below the skin and between the internal organs. So this is how the matrix of a adipose tissue looks like. Okay, now the cells of this tissue, as we said, are filled with flat globules, and the storage of fat cells also act as an insulator. Now the cells of this adipose tissues are called as adipocytes, and they are found beneath the skin, around the kidney, heart and eyeballs. Now the main function of this adipose tissue is that as it stores and metabolizes fat, it is a considerable source of energy. It also acts as a shock absorber around the kidney, heart and eyeballs, and it prevents heat loss by forming an insulating layer. That is why we can say that this tissue acts as an insulator as well. So we studied about epithelial tissues, the different types of epithelial tissues, connective tissues like blood, cartilage, ligaments, bones, adipose tissues, areolar tissues. Now we are going to study about muscular tissue. Now muscular tissue consists of elongated, means long cells, also called as muscle fiber. This tissue is responsible for the movement in our body. Now muscle contains special proteins called as contractile proteins, which contract and relax to cause movement. So the movement in our body is mainly due to these muscular tissues, and they have very long fiber like cells called as muscle fibers, and they're capable of contraction and relaxation due to proteins. So let's see different types of muscles. The first muscles that we're going to study are about skeletal muscles or striated muscles. Okay. Now we can move some muscles by our conscious will. That is, under the control of our will, we can move some muscles, right? Like the muscles present in our limbs, we move them when we want them to and stop when we decide. So such muscles are called as voluntary muscles. Now these muscles are also called as skeletal muscles, as they are mostly attached to the bones and help in the body movement. If we view these muscles under a microscope, they show alternate light and dark band or striations when stained appropriately. That is, if we observe these muscles under a microscope, we can see shades like this and like striations, stripe type, we could see it. Okay, so these muscles are called as striated muscles. Now the cells of these tissues are long, cylindrical, unbranched and multinucleate. That is, they have many nuclei. So what are the characteristics of the cell? The cells of a skeletal or a striated muscles are, they are long, they are cylindrical in shapes, they are unbranched and they have many nuclei. Now let's see about smooth and unstriated muscle. Now there are certain muscles that we cannot move under our own will. For example, the movement of food in the alimentary canal or the contraction and relaxation of blood vessels. These all are involuntary movements. So the muscles that control such involuntary movement are called as smooth muscles or involuntary muscles. So where can such types of muscles be found? They are found in the iris of our eye, in our ureterus, in the bronchi of our lungs. So these muscles, they cannot be controlled in our will. Okay, they are involuntary muscles and they're also called as smooth muscles. Now let's see the peculiarities of the cells of such muscles. The cells are long with pointed ends, like they're spindle shaped. See, they're like spindle shaped and they are uninucleate. They have only a single nucleate and they have no stripes. So that is why they are called as unstriated muscles. Now, the next type of muscle that we're going to study is cardiac muscles. Now, hearing the name itself, we know that these are the muscles that are seen at the heart. So, the muscles of the heart, they show rhythmic contraction and relaxation throughout their life. So, these involuntary muscles are called as cardiac muscles. So, how is the structure of this heart muscle? The cells of this heart muscles are cylindrical, they are branched, and they are uninucleate. They have only one nucleus. So they are cylindrical in shape, they are branched, and they have only one nucleus. And these are involuntary muscles that are found at our heart. Now the last animal tissue that we are going to study is nervous tissue. Now all cells possess the ability to respond to a stimuli. Say for example, when we touch something hot, we quickly takes our hand away, right? So this is actually a response to that hot object, right? To that change or to that stimulus. So every living organism responds to a stimulus. However, the cells of the nervous tissue are highly specialized for being stimulated, and then what do the cells do? They transmit the stimulus rapidly from one place to another within the body. The brain, the spinal cord and nerves, they are all composed of this nervous tissue. The cells of this tissue are called as nerve cells or neurons. So let's see neurons in the next slide. So the neuron consists of a cell body with a nucleus and a cytoplasm from which long thin hair-like part arise. Each neuron has a single long part process called as axon and many short branched paths or processes called as dendrites. So neuron, it consists of a cell body with a nucleus and a cytoplasm. It consists of a long tail like cylindrical process with tiny branches at the end. It is covered by a sheath, and it also has short hair-like extensions called as dendron, which is further subdivided into dendrites. An individual nerve cell may keep up to about a meter long. Okay, so it's about 1 meter long. Now, many nerve fibers, they bond together by a connective tissue making up a nerve like this. See? Okay, so the nerve fibers are bound together by a connective tissue to make up the nerve. Now the signal that passes along the nerve fiber is called as the nerve impulse. Okay, the signal that passes along the nerve fiber is called as the nerve impulse. Nerve impulses allow us to move our muscles when we need to. For example, when you touch a stone, our hands will suddenly move away, right? So this nerve impulses allow us to move when such cases arises. So the functional combination of a nerve and a muscle tissue is the fundamental to most animals. This combination enables animals to move rapidly in response to a stimuli. So that's all for chapter 6 tissues. Tune in soon for the next session. Till then, may God bless you all. Stay safe, take care, and thank you so much. Bye-bye.